from empirical merit. And the idea, very simply, is that the uniquely human awareness of death gives rise to potentially paralyzing terror that's assuaged through the construction and maintenance of culture. But the problem is that to the extent that your beliefs serve a death-denying function, that creates problems when other people don't happen to share them. All right, well, real quickly, what can we do about that? If these ideas have merit, then, does this help us, or are we just informed bystanders as we witness the demise of the human species? Who knows? In the Escape from Evil book, Becker wondered. He said, hey, I don't know if a self-conscious piece of species meat is a viable form of life. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea. All right, well, he was dying at the time, so maybe he was having a bad day. And let's be a little bit more optimistic, and let's see if there might be some ways of thinking about this that are potentially useful. All right, there's a couple of things that I would argue just on empirical grounds. We've done some studies, first of all, where we've demonstrated that when people's self-esteem is elevated, when people have high self-esteem, that reduces the defensive reactions to reminders of death. And so one way that we might want to think about, well, how can we use these ideas to constructive advantage? One way is to make people feel good about themselves. The problem with that, and I'm speed talking in the service of shutting up soon, is that there's a huge difference between genuine self-esteem and narcissistic self-inflation. Do they have narcissists here in Canada? Anyway, where I am, the problem is the people who appear most superficially self-confident are often the ones that are most tragically impoverished. And so when I say that self-esteem is a good thing, I mean the good kind of self-esteem, not the bad kind of self-esteem. Another thing that we can do is to promote the construction and maintenance of cultural worldviews that emphasize the value of tolerance. All right, I think this may be an okay word to use in Canada, but in America, it's really loaded. It's liberal, the idea of being tolerant and open-minded. We've done studies where we remind Americans that one of the cool things about America at its best is our tolerance and open-mindedness for other people. When we do that, that reduces the defensive reactions to reminders of mortality. We have another one that I'm really excited about that we call a common humanity prime. We bring people into the lab, and we're like, look, you know what? Everyone on Earth is descended from a single population of about 2,000 or so people from the same neighborhood in East Africa. Who's aware of that? That we came out of a genetic bottleneck. Every one of us is incredibly similar. All humans have much more in common than we are different. That's the so-called common humanity prime. When we do that, that also reduces the defensive reactions to reminders of mortality. One more, and I promise I'll quit, and that is coming to terms with our own mortality. Anyone know the Irwin Yalom book, Existential Psychotherapy? Oh, you got that? I love that. So anyway, Yalom says, look, a constructive confrontation with mortality is not demoralizing. It's potentially uplifting. And we have some research to that effect. And so I'll leave you with two thoughts that I've always been fond of. I like the dead French novelist Albert Camus. Does anybody know Camus' work? In his notebooks, scribbled on the margin somewhere, Camus once wrote, "Come to terms with death. Thereafter, anything is possible." And I like that. I think that's pretty good. I also like the last line of The Plague. Has anybody read that book? It's really kind of a depressing book, but the last sentence of The Plague, Camus says, we learn in times of pestilence that there is more to admire. He says in mankind, but I'll say humankind. We learn in times of pestilence there is more to admire in humankind than to despise. And I hope that he's right.